My name is Nathan Settembrini. You may remember me from actually this very room. We did the evolution of a dashboard back in July. That was super fun. It's great to be back with you. And actually, a little bit's changed with me since I presented that dashboard. I joined Analytic Vizion. And basically what we are is a local model consulting firm focused on data analytics. And really, it's more than just about the data analytics. We are a leadership development platform. If you've heard of the data school, the whole idea for us is to build the next generation of data leaders in Atlanta. And so we have this kind of 5-year program where we take people through 3 years of learning, 2 years of leading projects and people, and then 1 year of launching. So at the end of the 5 years, you actually kind of get pushed out. The salaries go down as a way to get you kind of nudged out and launched back into the marketplace. So if you are interested in the next year, we'll be certainly hiring some folks. Typically Tableau, Alteryx, data science. But yeah, let's jump in here. So analytics. It's in our company name. I was thinking about it. I was like, I don't really know the background of this word analytics. And what's the etymology of it? A lot of us call ourselves analysts, or maybe it's in our job title. Me personally, it's been part of my job for the last 10 plus years. And it's part of analysis. All these words are related. What do they mean? And if you've ever seen any data visualization presentation, they always put the 9s up on the screen, and they're all black, or it's all numbers, and there's some 9s in there, and they say, how many 9s are on the screen? And you try to count them. It's impossible. And then they change it red, and it becomes super easy to see. So maybe it's just my are we as analysts, are we anal retentive, right? Is anal retentiveness part of being an analyst? Is it part of analytics, right? So an anal retentive person is one who pays such attention to detail that it becomes an obsession and may become an annoyance to others. One of my former coworkers in the back may attest to some anal retentive tendencies. And I love this little chart here. It actually had to add the hyphen. I don't know if you saw that. But yeah. Because actually Microsoft was telling me, hey, there's a hyphen here. I was like, okay, we'll add it. But yeah, so I was thinking about this a little more. I was like, okay, what else? Man, whenever I'm in my car and I'm driving, and I've got the volume set, 10 is a great volume. Maybe 12, also good. 11, no, I was kind of, and this happened the other day. This was incredible. So not only did I get 27, which I try to create, this is how I tell my wife and my gas apart, is mine always are funny numbers and hers are like, just whatever. But this landed on 11 even. Can you believe it? It was great. If you're on Reddit and you follow Oddly Satisfying, that's good stuff. Even today's date, guys. Am I right? It's not a palindrome, but it's good. I was sitting in the back a few minutes ago, actually, and a lady walks in, and she was here for the Medicare session. And I'm like, well, this is definitely not it. I was like, do you have some, she pulls out the paperwork, she shows me 221.20. I was like, ooh, you're a little early. She pinched me pretty hard, actually. But I was like, no, today is a beautiful day. It's 2/20/2020. Man, okay, so what about the real etymology of analysis? Actually, it has nothing to do with being anal retentive. I just thought that was funny. So this word goes back to, you can trace it back to the 1580s. I'm not going to read all of this, but it's kind of this idea of breaking up, loosening, getting in there and like finding freedom for insight or information or knowledge, right? And so, I mean, it's even like loosening ships from its moorings and set sail. So it has some kind of cool roots to it. And you know, I think this is a noble profession for all of us. Yeah, so you are here, you're sitting at the Tableau user group here in Atlanta. And if you've been to any one of these or any Tableau event, you know that Tableau is their whole thing is about helping people see and understand data. They're helping people unleash the power of their data, to set it free, set sail. And actually, so Gartner consistently has recognized Tableau as a leader in data and analytics. So this is the part of our show where if you're brand new to Tableau, this section is for you, okay? So Tableau, up there in the upper right, leader. So strengths, right? I totally believe all this stuff, right? Customer enthusiasm, like I've never seen a software tool that people get as excited about. If you were in Vegas for TC, 20,000 people coming together to talk about data, it's incredible. It's a little like, hey, pass around the Kool-Aid, let's all, you know, but it is a lot of fun. You know, the ease of visual exploration, data manipulation, and so these are the strengths of why Tableau is in this upper right quadrant, and just the growth that they've seen over the years. And they've consistently been, you know, kind of up there. There's actually a cool viz that follows, you know, the progress over time and compares it to Microsoft, and they're kind of both like, It kind of bothers me that Microsoft's up there a little higher and to the right, but you know, they do have a more holistic platform. They're not as focused on visual analytics as Tableau is. But the cautions I thought were interesting. So they're expecting in the augmented era, where the software tools are helping us with the data analytics, that may prove to be kind of shaky ground for Tableau if they don't watch it, because new market entrants could come in, and then governance they perceived as, you know, and all this is perception, right? So perceptions of weak governance, and then also sales experience. So as they built out the platform, and I'm going to talk about the platform in a second, as they built it out over the years, they've had to, you know, they've poured a ton of money into building cool software. So they got to charge for it, right? And so they have these data management add-ons, and so people are like, oh, you're nickeling and diming me. But no, really, like, that is a valuable tool. It shouldn't be free, right? And they moved to the subscription model, and that was a little painful of a process for some people. And so those are things that are kind of holding Tableau back a little bit in this magic quadrant, but you know, obviously an amazing tool. Okay, so I built this for a client who had never heard of Tableau. They were kind of in this like, hey, we've got a whole bunch of data sources, we want some dashboards, we don't have anything to prepare the data, all of our analysts are stuck in Excel all the time. So I said, okay, well let me help you conceptualize the Tableau platform, because they've really built it, like it started with desktop, right? It was a desktop application that you could drag some pills around and see some cool charts. And then they said, okay, well how do we get distribution of these charts? How do we, to your point earlier, how do we get these dashboards that I, you know, so painstakingly crafted in the hands of the people who actually need to see them? And so that's where Tableau Server came about. And then some people are like, oh, I can't manage a server. They're like, oh, well, we'll host it for you. That now you have Tableau Online. And then they started thinking, okay, well, what do people need to do to really make the most of Tableau? What's kind of a painful thing? Actually preparing the data and connecting to the data sources, prepping the data, mashing it all together, and spitting it out. And so they've kind of taken one step at a time on this incredible product roadmap journey to basically release this. And so they have Tableau Prep. And so for this particular client, I said, okay, you could use Tableau Prep to connect to your various data sources, pull the data in, mash it all together, spit it back out, and publish it to Tableau Online as published data sources. don't really need a data warehouse if you're small and you're just a few people. So published data sources work great. And then with the data management add-on, you can schedule those refreshes to happen. So you actually publish the prep workflow to Tableau Online, and now it's constantly grabbing the data, prepping it, pumping it into the back end of your dashboards. And then all your stakeholders, internal and potentially external, because a lot of people we talk to these days are thinking about, how do I monetize the data that I have? Do I have data assets that I could then sell back to my customers? And so each one of them just log into Tableau Online and they see different dashboards depending on who they are. And so this is kind of the platform at a glance. There's more nuance to it if you wanted to dive deeper, but yeah. Oh, my label got, this was supposed to be ERP system. I think it got removed. All right. Oh, hey! Man, that's satisfying, huh? All right, so the reason we're all here, well, I'm sure this isn't the only reason you're here. You're here for the camaraderie and, for Karen mostly. For the jokes. Yeah. Okay, so last month, if you were at the 10th anniversary, we did a giveaway. I had basically a week to put together a dashboard that would act as the kind of the raffle. We were going to get a big raffle bin and be like, and then pull tickets and be like, 701, 802, come on down. But we thought, hey, it's a Tableau event. Why don't we do it in Tableau? And so I created a dashboard that was kind of based on the concept of, it has kind of a couple of things baked in. It's not super consistent, but kind of this Vegas-y feel of like, hey, let's spin the wheel or pull the slot machine or whatever. And each one of these little slices in the pie, this is just an image. We'll go to, here, I'll just go to it. Each one of the slices in the pie is a person who has entered this raffle. So we had some amazing prizes sponsored by Alteryx, Applied Resources, Snowflake, and Tableau. Anybody here win a prize at the? Yeah, what'd you win?
It was an Apple Watch, but it turned into a Samsung watch.
Oh, nice. Good for you.
Because he's a Droid user.
But yeah, so the idea was let's generate a random number, and we'll pick a person and then have them come on down. Since then, in preparing for this talk, and there's a lot of pressure when you publish something on Tableau Public as well, I was like, okay, well, this is kind of hacky, and because what we had it doing was we were going out to another website to pull the random number, entering it as a parameter in this dashboard, and then having it show the person. And then the parameters as a data source thing, which I'll talk about in a second, is how we stored the winners in the winner's circle. And so we had this list of names that would appear on the right-hand side. Yeah, so we're going to walk through kind of what the requirements were as we built it, and how you could use this in your day-to-day life, because this is a concept that can be leveraged to do all kinds of cool stuff in terms of like what-if analysis, and kind of making the dashboard feel more like an application instead of just telling me the news. Like, help me, I want to interact with the dashboard and have the dashboard create new scenarios, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to stay with the slides for a second. Oh no. All right. So let's get real nerdy and talk functional requirements. So if I had the time to say, all right, I want the dashboard to do this, this, and this. I want to define success and then work backwards to the solution that gets us to success. So requirements of any raffle, right? I want people to be able to join my raffle, to submit a ticket. In this case, they're filling out a form on the web, and it's entering their data. I want to be able to draw a random name from that list and display it. Actually, in this first point, joining live is important because, as we'll see in a second, the data source is changing over time, and I need to be able to constantly be using the latest list of people because I'm allowing them to join live. And so once we draw a name, we want to add that name to the winner circle. But sometimes somebody's not in the room, and you're like, Melissa, come on down. She left. It's like, sorry, no Tableau conference ticket for you. I think that actually happened, right?
Yeah.
Oh, poor girl. Yeah, and so those people actually, for the sake of just winners and losers, I just called it the losers list. I don't know. They're not really a loser, but they were not present. And so in our dashboard, we're going to have data sources for, here are our winners, here are our people who are losers who were drawn but weren't present, and so they missed out. We don't want to redraw them, that's the whole point. So we want to remove the names from the winner circle and add them to the loser list if we were to add them to the winner circle, and then it turns out they're not here, we want to be able to move them to the right spot. And we also want to prevent winners and losers from being repicked, and also we want to be able to hit an X and clear the whole thing. So here's the conceptual solution. So enter contest, list of entrants. We're going to pick a random winner. We're going to display that winner. And we're going to either add that winner to the winner circle, or we'll add them to the loser list. If we've added them to the winner circle and they're like, you know what, I don't want this ticket, and then put them in the recycling bin here. And then also we need to be able to clear the current winner that we're displaying, because oftentimes it takes a long time for someone to come down, receive their prize. We wanted their name to be displayed in full glory, and so we have an extra icon to clear that winner at the end. And then of course, start over. So this is what we set out to build. Let's talk about the implementation. I'll go through this fairly quickly because it's conceptual, but it's helpful to know what's going on behind the scenes. So what we decided to do was we had one QR code that linked to a Google form. And so when you, oh no, let me just pull it up. Sorry, I'm being a little dramatic today. You guys are fun. Okay, so this was our Google form. You'd put in your name. I think I knocked that out.
So you're still there.
Could be.
I feel like I was stepping on something. Maybe I'll just unplug, replug. Here we go. It's acting like it's doing something. There we go. There we go. Thank you. Hey, Hal, let's give it up for our IT support team. Yeah! You guys are awesome. Okay, so you point your phone at the QR code, it takes you here, you put your name and stuff in here, and it inserts you into a Google Sheet. And so this is a mocked up version of our Google Sheet with some funny names that I found on the internet. So we have PD Cruiser and Anastasia. There were some sketchy ones I had to remove. But, so we're using array formulas. If I don't know if you're familiar with array formulas in Google Sheets, but basically what it does is you write the formula once, and it does it for every row where there's data. Super helpful. So in this case, we're saying, hey, if there's a timestamp, well, the first one it's saying, let's give this column a name. We're going to call it unique ID. Otherwise, is that big enough? Oh, wrong way. Let me zoom in. Sorry. And this is not an important part of the presentation, but if you're interested in Google Sheets, so basically what it's doing is figuring out what the next unique ID would be, and so then it fills them in all the way down to the bottom. It doesn't go any further, which is super nice. The random, so this is where we are picking out of the hat, right? So Tableau used to have, but it actually still does, kind of support a random number generator, but it's not a supported function in Tableau, and so when you type it in, it doesn't actually turn the color like you would expect it to. And it's not reliable in what I found to produce actually random results. It's kind of seemed to always be kind of in the same little segment of the pie. But this is a super, super long random number. And basically we are predetermining who the winner will be based on this Google Sheet number. So, and anytime someone new adds their name to the list, Google is recomputing the random numbers. And so it's kind of like, you know, when you go to one of these Raffle things, between the drawings, they're also shuffling, right? And so this kind of simulates that pretty well. And so like if I go to the bottom, and if I were to add, oops, you know, like another date, you can see here, it added that. Ooh. Okay, let's just do this. So it not only did it generate the 0.72, but all these other ones re-rendered as well, which is helpful. Let's undo that. Cool. So that's where we're doing our random number. I'm just gonna keep this in this format. Is that big enough? All right, so we're adding the record to the Google Sheet. So that's all this slide was supposed to be. It's like, how are we getting the data into the table? And what is the table? It was a Google Sheet. Don't worry, if you filled out the form, your names are not in my Tableau public biz. That was actually published on our internal Tableau server. And so, and actually that's the way we were able to create a live connection to this Google Sheet. In Tableau public, it's a nightly refresh. And so you all would have had to fill out the form the day before, and then we'd come back and do the Raffle. So it helped that we had a Tableau Online site that we could just throw it up real quick, have a live connection to the Google Sheet, and as people are filling out the form, we're constantly pulling in the latest numbers. All right, now the next, here I'll do this. Interesting. It just changed the view, that's nice. Okay,
Question?
so implementation. So how do we do this? I just talked about this. Yeah.
How are you removing duplicate entries? How are you handling duplicate entries?
Ah, good question. Because you guys were sneaky. We had some people fill out the form 15 or 20 times. But I was in the back of the room, deduping like a bag. It was awesome. Actually, I had another array calc that was counting duplicates in the table, and I would just delete people as they. If I saw two show up, I just delete it. What I should have done is said duplicate row must equal 1, and just excluded anyone who had their name in there twice. But to be fair, the QR code was at multiple vendor tables, and so it was at the Snowflake table, it was at the Applied Resources table, and so people were going to the different tables and thinking they could get multiple tickets. It's fine. If that's you, I forgive you. You just made my life a little stressful during that part. I was like, oh, delete. Okay, so we talked about how we did this, right? Oh, here we go. So this bottom note is important. So the slot machine icon in the middle of the viz, this is kind of where we're drawing the random number. And so what we're doing is that slot machine number is filtered down to the minimum, so the top one minimum record. So whoever has the smallest random number, you were the next winner. So it was predetermined before we click the button who's going to be shown next. And actually that's why it's important that we have a loser list, because if we remove them and then we hit it again, that number is still the next person. So anyways, we'll see that in a second. And also to Matt's point, if you were following on the context filter, so since we were doing a top N type of filter, we had to put everything else on context except for that one. And we'll see that when we dig into the dashboard. All right, displaying the winner. So top one ID, let's say it's ID number 195. Then we have a parameter. I actually don't like this view. Let me change it. How to do that? Okay. Display settings. There we go. Duplicate slideshow. Beautiful. All right. It was like this big. I was having a hard time seeing it. All right. So we're going to take this row. So we filter down the data set to the top one number. And then we're going to, and we have a parameter for current winner. And we're going to take that person's ID and stick it into current winner. And then we're going to filter that down. So we have just a text label with Luke's name here. And there's a filter on there that says, you just show me the current winner, which is only going to be one person. We're going to show their name and their company, and then what number they are. And so that's kind of how it filters down to the current winner. And we'll walk through each of these worksheets so you can see it in action. Let me just pause for a quick second. I've been talking about parameters a lot. If you're new to Tableau, a parameter, all it is a field of some data type. Doesn't matter. It could be a string, so like some words. It could be an integer, so like a number. It could be a decimal place number, like a double, right? It could be a date. So maybe you'd have a parameter of a date, a start date and an end date, right? And really all it is, it's a way to give your user the ability to input information and have the viz respond to that input. And so every time you enter a parameter and hit enter, the whole viz is re-rendering based on the new information that you provided. Super powerful tool. The user interface for parameters is pretty bad. It hasn't changed a lot since, Dan, you've been around this much longer than, it's kind of, Luke Stanky calls it the alligator of Tableau. It's like the thing that didn't really keep evolving with the rest of the creation. But parameters, super powerful tools. You can use lots of them. You can use one. You've seen them actually in both presentations. Did you use a parameter? Definitely in the first one. There was a drop down.
I told him.
Oh, that's right. You avoided it. So super powerful tool. Parameter action, all that does is it allows you to take data that's from one of the vizes, so one of your charts or a value, and grab that number or that date or that total sales, whatever it is, and grab that number and put it into a parameter. And so you click on the dashboard and it's going to take that number from the viz, in our case, number 195, and it's going to say, all right, the viz is telling me that the top one random number is person number 195. I'm going to take that number, and when you click that little slot machine, it's going to take 195 and put it into the current winner parameter, and then re-render everything. So right after it inserts it, everything re-renders. And so that's why, and I've got filters to make the slot machine go away when there's a person in current winner, and the name pop up when there's a current winner. And so they're kind of just stacked on each other and they change. So that's that piece. Now we're getting to the meat. All right, you guys ready? This next part is where we get into parameters as a data source. And because really what we need to do is not just save one person as the current winner, but save all the current winners. And so it's going to be kind of a list of winners or losers. We need to be able to add that to some group, some set, right? And so initially I was like, ooh, a set. Sets could be interesting. Maybe use set actions to change who's in the set, add people to the winner set, add people to the loser set. The problem with sets exist inside the data source. They're created based on a dimension in the data. So you say, I'm going to create a set of names or a set of unique IDs. And so you have a list of IDs, and they're either in the set or they're out of the set. and you can use actions to bring people in and out. The problem is they're tied to the data source. So when the data source changes, for example, when we refresh it to pull the latest data from Google Sheets, now my set is jacked up and I don't have my winners. Yeah, so I lose my winners potentially. Parameters, on the other hand, exist outside of the data source. So if you're ever looking at your, the data pane in Tableau, the thing on the left, you have your dimensions, you have your measures, you have your sets. At the very bottom, you have your parameters. And it doesn't matter which data source you're on, you can always use the parameter because they exist outside. But you can use data from inside the data source to feed into the parameter. And that's what we're going to do, is we're going to use the data source to say, hey, what's the value? And then we're going to use the parameter to say, all right, let's go put the value in the parameter. And that's so it's our storage. It's almost like a little miniature database. And apparently, I tried to do some research on this, there's not really any limitation to how many characters you can put in a string parameter. The limitation usually is if you try to feed a parameter into a query, so like a schedule or a stored procedure. So let's say, give me all the sales after X date. That's a bad example. But if you try to feed a really long parameter value into a stored procedure, and SQL will sometimes say, hey, it's longer than 36,000 whatevers, and so no dice, right? But as long as you're living within the Tableau world, there's almost like no maximum to the parameter list. All right, so let's just talk about this concept of parameters as a data source. So we're going to use a parameter. So good thing we're not doing like a drinking game on how many times I say the word parameter. So you guys would be toasted. So we're going to use it to store multiple values. They exist outside the data source, like I said, but they can be populated with values. And so really the trick is we're going to use calculated fields inside the data source, so new fields that do specific actions. So I want to add to the parameter, I want to remove from the parameter, I want to count how many people or how many winners there are. And so I want to do all that inside my data source, but I'm referencing these parameters that are almost like another data source. So this is kind of a simple example. So let's say we have current winner here, number 195. We just started, the winner circle is empty, right? One thing that you have to do first is figure out how am I going to separate my parameter values within the parameter. And so if you've ever used Excel and you get like a comma delimited file, so the delimiter in a comma delimited file is a comma, right? Sometimes you get a pipe delimited file or a tilde delimited file. It's the more random that delimiter is, the better. Like it should not appear in the data or else it'll mess this up, right? So you wouldn't want to use a space, for example. But you just need some separator. And so what I see most people using is a tilde, because who uses that in real life? So, so we're going to create a calculated field. So orange is calculated fields, purple is parameters. So just so we're on the same page. I try to use Tableau's color scheme. So this is our delimited ID. So it would be 195 with tildes on both sides. There's another calculated field that says, let's add the current winner to the winner circle. All we do is we reference the winner circle, which is null. We do a concatenation, just a plus, because it's a string. And we're going to plus this delimited ID. And so then at the end, we're left with 195 surrounded by tildes in our winner circle. And we did that action using a parameter action. And so you can do this over and over again and use all kinds of different, here's the next winner, right? So our next current winner is number 37. We have number 195 in the winner circle. We're going to add number 37 to the winner circle. So we take the previous value of winner circle, which is a parameter. We take the delimited ID, which is the filter down one. And we're just going to add those together. And so now we're left with tilde 195, tilde 37. And we can continue this indefinitely. And we can, if we want to remove 195, we can use another calculated field. So super powerful. What's funny, doing research for this, initially I was, on all my like tweets and stuff, I was like, oh, I'm inspired by Jonathan Drummond to do this. But really, our OG, Mark Jackson from Atlanta, created Monopoly using parameters as a data source like 5 years ago. But we didn't have parameter actions then, so how did he do it? He had to use JavaScript, which is kind of like, for most people, it's like, I don't want to deal with that. And so that's why, why is this becoming an important thing now? It's because in the spring last year, they released parameter actions. And so people are like, this is powerful, we can use this. And so you start to see people like Jonathan Drummond, this is his featured viz currently. Someone like Mark Reed, this guy is ridiculous, you should follow him. And we'll look at some of these dashboards. Using parameters as a data source to draw on a dashboard. So like draw circles, connect cities, it's super cool. Lindsey Poulter, DataViz Lens, her parameter action dashboard has a tab dedicated to that. So it is a thing, it is super powerful, and let's figure out how to use it. So here are the kind of basic toolkit. So if you were to go, let's say you just bought a house and you needed a toolbox of basic stuff, right? You would go get a hammer, you get a measuring tape, you get some glue or something. And so like that's your like basic toolkit. So here's kind of what you would go to Home Depot and buy. So I need to take my current parameter and add something to it at the end. Let's say instead of adding at the end, I want to insert it at the front. Like literally, it's so easy, right? Remove. So this is important. So I've got a value that's in my set, and I want to remove them. And I'm not just going to remove it if I find it once. I'm going to remove all copies of it. Because you see some people using this will actually just continue to append. They don't ever remove. And they look at, is it in the data set twice? If it's in the data set twice, then that means that I wanted to remove it. Because I add it once to add it, and I add it a second time to remove it, and I add it once to add it. And so I prefer this method where we're gonna keep one copy in the data source, but it kind of depends on your use case. Is this value, this record in the data that I'm looking at, is it in my parameter data source? So contains, right? Is this ID in this list? Reset the list. So this is the easiest calc of all time. Just some empty quotes, no space, nothing. We're just going to push that into the parameter and it wipes it clean. Append unique. So this is probably the preferred way to append. It's first, I'm going to make sure it's not in the list, and then I'm going to add it to the end. So, and there's one more at the end that we'll cover once we get in here. Oh, did everyone get it? Well, okay, so I'm going to post these slides on Slack. We have an ATUG Slack. Would love for you guys to join. And you'll be able to download them there. So feel free. I'll probably also post them on the LinkedIn group. Okay, so now we're back to our concept. How do we build it in real life? So add to the winner circle. So we're going to take our current winner, our winner circle, and our losers list. We're going to use calculated fields. And we already talked about the delimited ID. And we're just going to use the add. So we're going to append it to the end. So take my current value of winner circle and add the new winner. And then I'm going to take my loser value and add the new loser. So pretty straightforward. Then how do we clear the values? Just going to fly through this. So we have a current winner. So this parameter is actually an integer because my winner ID is an integer. And so to clear this one, I have another calculated field that's just a 0, and it just inserts a 0 into that parameter. The winner circle here, we want to remove from the winner circle. So this part was, they're in the winner circle. I don't want them in the winner circle. I want them in the loser circle. And so I'm going to replace it, basically get them out of the winner circle and then add them also to the loser list. And then this last one is, how do I start over? I'm going to just clear all my lists by inserting, I'm going to clear my winner and I'm going to clear my list. And I can actually use the same action to clear my winner and my loser list, and we'll look at that in a second. All right, so now we're going to walk through this in Tableau. I can't believe it's taken this long to get to actually opening the tool. Doing good. Okay. So I changed my resolution to make it as big as possible. I think it's legible. All right. So if you haven't seen the dashboard in action, let's just walk through that. So each little slice on this pie is an entrant. We're going to click to spin. Say, all right, Luke, come on down, Luke. And then we're going to add Luke to the winner circle. So you can see this little icon popped up and this icon popped up. If we click this, it adds Luke to the winner circle. And then Luke's getting his prize, he's taking pictures, he's getting flowers, whatever. And then we're like, all right, Luke, sit down, let's get another winner. And then we click to spin. All right, Polly, come on down. And then, we added her to the winner circle, but then it's like, oh, Polly's not here. So we need to remove Polly from the winner circle. So we have this little X, click that. You can see the colors here. I don't know if you can tell the difference on the screen, but prior winners were making gold, losers we're graying them out, and the current winner we're making red on the pie. And so, we can keep doing this all day. And what's interesting is, so I use this new, what's this called? Huh? Oh no, yeah. So yeah, closed captioning. So if you wanted to see what's going on behind the scene, we'll turn on closed captioning, and we'll see the parameter values that are going on. So current winner ID is 216. Our winner list has these 3 IDs, and our loser list has this one person that we sent to the loser list. But so this is the this new functionality. Show hide. Yeah, it's a collapsible container. That's the official term. It's actually pretty brilliant. I used it on a client's dashboard this morning. So yeah. So this is the dashboard. Let's dig into the different worksheets. Any questions where we're at right now? No. All right, let's reset. So pick a number. So this is a shape mark type. I created a custom shape of this funny little thing. I didn't create this, I just found it online. And actually, so I meant to add this, I'll add this to the resources. There's a couple really good free icon sites that I watched. Chantilly's presentation from 2019 Tableau conference, real good, you should watch it. It's about design for non-designers. All right, so you can see here, you remember back to our process. We have the top one by the random value, and we're taking the minimum. And so that means that under this viz right now, there's only one person, and actually we can put their name. Let's just put it on label. So filler up is up next. And so that's literally, there's only one row of data here that's causing this to be shown. And so this true false hide spinner to show winner. This is just a calculated field. Is winner equal to 0? As in there's no winner yet? Then I need to show my spinner. But as soon as there's a winner, hide my spinner. So that's that guy. Let me undo that. So these, is it on the winner list? So these are a couple of my toolkit calculations that I recommended. Got those directly from Jonathan Drummy's blog post. Let's see, on winner list. So is the ID for filler up on the winner list? And also, is it on the loser list? And so what this gets me is anybody who's already won or already lost, I want to filter them out and just have the potential winners left. And then, so that's my context. You know, we were talking about what is context. It's basically, it's like, you start with everything, and I want to create kind of two levels of the calculation. So I want to push that computation higher in the stack. And so I want to say, all right, just give me the potentials, the people that are still in my little Raffle thing. So that's my context. And then from that list, give me the top one, so the minimum random number. And yeah, so that's that piece. And so we have an action based on that. So we go to dashboard actions. And it's, which one is it? Oh man, I should have named these little that are like 1, 2, 3. Should be like, spin that wheel. There it is. That's a good one. All right, so spin that wheel is, so this is a parameter action dialog box. So this is where you set all the criteria for it. So you give it a name, preferably a nice descriptive name, so when you're looking at it later, you know what you're reading. You assign it to a worksheet. So the worksheet I want is this pick number worksheet. What is the target parameter? So I'm going to grab a value and I'm going to put it somewhere. Where is that? So in our case, it's the winner ID. And then the field that we're going to grab from the data set to put into the parameter, that's the field that I want. So that's this unique ID. And do I want to aggregate that value? You can see there's lots of options there. I do not want to aggregate it. I'm just going to take it as is and slap it into the parameter. And so when I click this wheel, it's doing that parameter action. It's saying, give me filler up's number, stick it into current winner, and then because I've got it filtered the way I do, filler up's name pops up. And let's winner name. So this is just a filter of is the current ID. Here, I'll just show it to you. Current winner. Is the unique ID of the row in the data set equal to the winner? And so that's only going to be for one person, and so it's going to return one name. And so now we have filler up. And then I've just got some some formatting to show name and then their company, because I thought it'd be fun. It's like, hey, Karen from Chick-fil-A, come on down. So yeah, so we show filler up's name. I have another action now to add filler up to the winner circle, and that parameter action is kind of where we're gonna take the ID and append it to the winner circle. And that's actually on two different worksheets. So that's on the name worksheet. So just in case, I wasn't sure if Nelson was going to be running this or Karen. So I wanted to make it, any user could pick this up and click kind of in the right spot and get it right. So if you thought, okay, well I'll just click the name or kind of in this general area, it'll add fill to the thing. I don't necessarily have to. Actually, let's add. Ooh, you know what that's going to do? That's going to make since I had him on the winner list and then I got rid of him, filler up's now not in the drawing anymore. And so the next person, so I can either add colonoscopy, I can either add them this way or using, I had no idea what names are going to show up on this thing. So I can also click this little icon, and let's go look at that icon. So that is this one. And so very similar, it's just a shape. And I've set the shape using my little font awesome shapes list. And then I've got the color set, basically forcing it to always be red if it's a non-zero value. And it shows up only when there's a current winner for that current winner. And because the winner ID is actually on detail, and this is important when you're taking a parameter value and passing it, or taking a value from the data source and passing it to the parameter, is that value actually has to be on detail somewhere. Or it has to be aggregated or whatever, right? So if you had sum of sales, that would have to be somewhere in the view in order for you to click that view and add sum of sales to a parameter. And so in this case, we've got winner ID on color, but we also have add to winner circle. So this is actually the field that we're going to use to push into the winner circle data source. And so add to winner circle, let's take a look at that. So this is the one we talked about. This is the last one in our tool belt. We're going to remove the name if it happened to be there first, and then we're just going to append the current winner. So yeah, and so that action, let's look at that. Dashboard actions. Add current winner to winner circle. So this one is on that double arrow worksheet. It's also on the winner's name worksheet. And our target parameter is the winner's list. And so what it's going to do, and this is kind of where we have to wrap our minds around it, it's going to fully replace the parameter value when it pushes it in. So if I want to keep what's currently in there, it needs to be referenced in my calculated field, right? And we've done that already. It's got my old values, my old parameter value plus my current winner. And we're going to push that into the winner circle parameter. All right. So now this table is just a list of name and company where I've formatted that and added a little X. And so this is also a shape. I just used the Tableau generic X. And we've got a couple things on detail. The add to loser list is the important one because that's the one that we're going to use. When you click this X, it's going to generate an action to remove this person from the list. And so let's look at that action. And we're kind of getting towards the end. I know it's getting a little sleepy, a little stuffy in here. All right, so move current winner to loser. Nope. Oh, here we go. Move from winner circle to loser list. So from that winner list, we're going to use target parameter is this loser list. So my running list of losers, and I'm going to use my calculated field add to loser list. So you can see like the mechanics of this are kind of the same. It's just a matter of like trying to understand what do I want it to do and where do I want the user to click to then push data into different parameters. And so it ends up kind of feeling like you're designing a software tool. It's pretty cool. And so the last, let's see. Oh, there's some special logic here that I did. So let's clear it all. Pick a name, and let's say Luke. Oh, I already added it. Dang it. All right. So we got Luke up there. Let's reset. Let's say we draw the next one, and Polly is not in the room. We haven't added her to the winner circle yet. I have this move. Let's move along button. So what I wanted to do is to say, okay, if I just have this clear the current winner, then the next person I'm going to draw is Polly, and I'm going to keep drawing Polly over and over again, right? And so I need this action to not just clear my current winner parameter, but to also add Polly to my loser list. Because if I'm not going to add her to my winner list, then I'm assuming she needs to go in my loser list. So you can see Polly went down here to number 66. So, and then, so that calculation's pretty straightforward. Current winner to loser list. And my eyes are getting a little cross-eyed. Where is it? Oh, add current winner to loser list. Thank you. All right, make this a little bigger. So, add current winner to the loser list if they didn't get added to the winner circle. So we're going to take the loser list and add some logic. So if the winner list has, so basically if the person who's the current winner is now in the winner list, we don't want to add anything to the loser list. But if they're not in the winner list, then by clicking this button, I actually want them to become a loser. And so we're gonna append them to the loser list. So that's what's happening. But we're gonna do that using the winner ID. And so this one's a little different because we're actually using the current parameter values to add to another parameter value instead of using a data source value to get appended to it. Yeah. Cool. So the last action is this clear everything, and this one actually does a lot. There's a lot of stuff that happens when you click this one. So X. So we're going to clear all winners, we're going to clear all losers, and we're also going to, so we're, that one's just, you click this, winner list goes to 0. Same thing with loser. And then the other one is clearing, reset winner to 0. So that one is if you click, so if you click the clear all, it's also going to reset your winner to 0. So that's kind of all of those pieces. So now we're going to talk through a couple more closing thoughts. So did we meet our functional requirements? I'd say yes, all the way down the board. This one QA note of, is my delimiter potentially going to show up in my data set? So the way to check for that is to create a calculated field, which, how much time do I have left? Oh, so good, okay. So just take a second. So we're going to use a level of detail calculation to figure out, let's go to, oh, you know what, I didn't talk about our spinner. Where's that? Winner wheel. This is the only time I've ever used a pie chart in Tableau. That's not true. Matt, keep me honest.
I went actually back to some of the old dashboards from 2016. We loved the pie
There were
charts.
some pie charts. Okay.
Times have changed.
I blame Chris Cashman then. He was my inspiration. So, okay. So here, this pie chart, I mean, it's just partitioned basically by unique ID. I've got it sorted so that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And what that allows us to do is see how random is this random number. And as you saw, it kind of does poke around the wheel, which is cool. When we're coloring this by this winners, losers, and waiters dimension. And so let's find that. Here it is. And so all this is saying is if the unique ID equals the current winner ID, then it's your current winner. And we're going to color that red. Otherwise, if it's on the winner list, so this is just a contains formula, then we're going to say, well, they're a previous winner, and we're going to make them gold. If they're on the loser list, then they missed out. We're going to make them gray, and then otherwise they are ready and waiting. And so you can see, let's just add a couple people. I'll add her. And so then we go to the winner wheel, and you can see his status is previous winner, and hers is she missed out. And what's cool is at the end of this, you can export any of these worksheets kind of the same way you would normally, right? So you could export this winner circle as a crosstab or as the whole thing as a PDF or whatever. And we actually failed to do that. So we were like, who won the raffle? But, all right. Oh yeah, so we're going to QA. Sorry, a little squirrel there. Let's see, what's a good, let's just do this. So the way I like to think about level of detail calculations is I want to perform a calculation that considers something that's outside of my view currently. And so in order to wrap my head around what do I want to show, usually what I'll do is actually create a view that I want the LOD to imitate. And so we're going to say, we want to know is the, so this is an entrant info, no. Yes, the unique ID. So I need to create a calculation that says contains let's see, unique ID. Does unique ID contain a tilde? Oops. Why? Oh, because unique ID, I need to make that a string first. So it'll never contain a tilde. And so yeah, we figured it out. But yeah, so false. And so what I need to do now is say, okay, for every unique ID, what is the maximum value of this contains? So true, false, true would be maximum, right? And so if I would return true, and if I see a true, that means that somewhere in my list of source data, the delimiter is found, right? And it's actually good practice to create a parameter for your delimiter itself. So that way you could change it. Oops. And so then for our delimited ID, we would just go here and change this to delimiter. Let's see. So let's see if I can make this bigger. Anyways, I think you guys get it. Okay, so let's create that level of detail calculation that kind of replicates this view. And so we're going to say, let's just call this QA delimiter in view. And so we're going to use a fixed calculation, which there's really 3 LODs. So there's fixed, there's include, and there's exclude. So fixed is for all values in the partition, do I see, or all values in context, do I see the tilde in the delimited ID? Include is to say, all right, I want to bring into this view, I want to bring in some other dimension that's not in the view. And exclude is, even if city is in the view, I want to disregard city when I calculate sum of sales, something like that, right? And so, let me make this a little bigger. So you fix it on something, on a dimension, and so we want to fix it on unique ID. And so the idea is we're basically creating this view in our formula. So we're going to fix it. We're going to say min of contains basically this formula. Min of that. Let's change this to our delimiter. It's almost too big. LODs on the fly in front of hundreds of people. Not fun. All right. So for every unique ID, actually we want to do the min on the outside. Or max. We're going to do max here. Oops. So what this is saying is, I want to look at all unique IDs. I want to see, does my unique ID contain my delimiter? And then, so that's going to give me, a bunch of falses, probably, maybe a true, and I want to take the max of that, and that's going to tell me if it's there. And so then you could say, whatever, but so for falses all the way down, you can. The nice thing is you can now remove all these other things. Oops. And this is just an aggregated value, kind of one data point. So that's that. All right, we're almost done. Almost done. All right. So design UI choices. So obviously chose kind of this ATUG motif. I went on flaticons.com, found some like Vegas fun little icons. Because icons make every dashboard more interesting. The header and circle background. Okay, so this, let me just show you. So if we move some stuff around, behind this is just an image. I call the wheel background. So this is just something I created in PowerPoint. Basically, just took two circles. And actually, the way I did it first was I took a screenshot of the dashboard as it was with the big pie chart, and then I used that as my template to draw the circle. But PowerPoint, believe it or not, PowerPoint is probably the most commonly used graphic design tool by visual analytics people, which is hilarious to me. There's also an amazing tool called Figma, if you've ever seen it. But it's basically like kind of like a Google Sheets version of kind of collaboratively creating design stuff. So you can do wireframes, all that kind of stuff. All right, so try to limit the number of colors we use, try to limit the varying fonts and font sizes, try to incorporate some kind of best practices. I try to make the action icons easily understood, so like the arrows, it's like, okay, that's going to take this value and send it over there. The little refresh icon, the X's, so like I wasn't trying to make you learn too much to figure out how to use this. And then so the icons help with that, and then also tooltips provide additional context. And so as you're hovering around, it tells you what to do. So like add him to the winner circle, that kind of thing. Okay, so real life, how do you guys take this and use it back at your job? And that's kind of what I always think about when I'm thinking about coming to an ATUG. It's like, what am I going to learn? Obviously, who am I going to meet? That kind of thing. But what am I going to learn that I can apply? And that's the whole reason why your companies let you spend 3 hours on a Thursday afternoon here. And so, scenario planning I mentioned. So let's say you have a bunch of customers and you want to assign them to a number of sales reps. You could use this to kind of create different scenarios. I want to assign, Coca-Cola to whoever. I'm going to assign Chick-fil-A to somebody else. And then you could be using those parameters and the logic behind it to drive other visuals. Okay, so like what does my quota look like compared to your quota now? That kind of thing. So like really anytime you're allocating dimensional values to a couple different buckets. So in our world with the commercial real estate stuff, you're restacking a building. So if you have a whole floor and customer service sits here and someone else sits over there, and you want to move this team to another floor, like you could use parameters as a data source to kind of reposition things and then show current stacking plan where everybody sits and now new stacking plan. So pretty cool. I would encourage you to go on, I promised you this, so let me just show you real quick. This is so cool, these two. So these are other applications of this concept. So drawing lines, you ready? So let's clear it. So here we have a XY axis, and really what it is he's got a data source where there's a bunch of pixels, like little dots, and they're all just little circles. And so you can see when I move my mouse around, there's like a little kind of trailing pixel thing. I click that, it adds that XY coordinate to the data source, and as I click around, it adds it and keeps drawing. So cool. I don't know what to use that for, but this one's even cooler because you can draw squares. So you click here and you click here, and now you have a square. Beautiful. This is probably most useful. There was something going around on Twitter not too long ago where it was like a travel dashboard, and this was kind of the first, like Nelson forwarded it to me, and he's like, dude, this is awesome, look at this. Someone had created, I think it was Mark Reed actually, he just hasn't published it yet, a kind of a trip planner dashboard. And so you would basically connect city to city, you'd say, okay, I want to go from here to here, and you would even choose like mode of transit. So like, I want to fly from here to here, then I'm going to drive from here to here. And it's computing different things based on the distance between the dots. Oh, that's probably why. So it's probably 2020.1 data. That's why he hasn't published it yet. Because he's using some of those cool new spatial calculations. And then once you plan your trip, he's got a save button in the corner. And he's moving that whole data source that you just created into a saved version. And you can save two things, go to the next tab, and compare your two trips. It's like, okay, this is cool. So that's what got me excited about this and why I wanted to kind of use it in this dashboard and talk to you guys about it. So this is Lindsay's. Her stuff's just so beautiful. This is not parameters as a data source. This is just parameters. So, you know, clicking two dates, so now you have this date filter. And so this is start date and end date are a parameter. And so this is her version of parameters as a data source. And if you go download this workbook, you'll see her calcs are a little different. She's using regex to parse this kind of continuing thing, this string. So watch this. Let's say I add phones. Oh, sorry. You gotta do it over here. And actually, I don't love the icons she used. So let's change. Where is it? Subcategory. A menu. That's what it was. Menu. So we're gonna go to menu, and so she's just using Unicode to say, okay, if it's selected, then give me a check. If it's unselected, I'm gonna say give me a little 0, a little O. I like that a little better. And so, okay, so let's add art. So we're gonna check art. We're gonna uncheck art. And we're gonna check art. And we're gonna uncheck art. And so you can see she's continuing to add art to the parameter multiple times. I don't know if that's too small to see, but art's in there 4 times. And she's using regex to say how many times is it in there. And if it's in there an even number of times, then it's not in there. If it's in there an odd number of times, it's in there. So pretty cool. But yeah, so I put together a list of resources, helpful stuff. I'm going to add, here, let me make a note to myself, add icons. But yeah, so Mark Jackson, his blog from the Monopoly thing from 2015 is still up, although the dashboard is defunct. So maybe he can use this new capability that I just taught him next time. Yeah. Like Mark could learn anything from me. Yeah, sure. Okay, other inspiration. So these are blogs that are about parameter actions, parameters, using parameters as a data source. If you're interested at all in this and trying to use it, like this will definitely get you started. And then obviously I would love to be a resource to you if I can. So Slack, if you're not on the ATUG Slack, I would advise you go to bit.ly.ATUG Slack, and it's capital ATUG-S, Slack, because case matters. Now I'll take you to the sign up link to sign up for Slack, and then you can, there's about 50 people in there I think right now. And we've got all kinds of channels. We've got tips and tricks, job boards, we've got a number of different things. Actually I can pull it up right here so you can see it. I can entice you. Rui asked if we could create a Latino channel. And so that's cool. So that one will be happening in Spanish. Let's see, come on. But yeah, if I can help you in any way, or if you want to have any questions or want to chat, here's my contact info. But that's it. Thank you. Yep. It was a very iterative process. I appreciate that question, actually. When I started, it was very, very ugly. I just wanted to get the function first, and then put a coat of polish on it. But I probably spent, I don't know, 8 to 16 hours on the first version, and then probably another 4 to 8 since then, polishing it up, and then another 8 preparing for this. So a good old solid week to kind of get to this point. So labor of love. Mr. Fox.
Do you want to just touch on briefly the new dynamic parameters coming up in 2020.1?
Yeah. So dynamic parameters, very cool functionality that's coming. So currently, let's just look at it. So you can load a parameter with values from the data source. So if I create a new parameter, I can, let's say, I can add values to the parameter. So like the options, so like a drop-down list, I can add that from a field. So let's say I had year, right? And I say I want to give them the ability to toggle between years, and that's a parameter. The problem is the years just keep coming. I just keep getting older. And so when 2021 comes around, you would actually have to open the workbook, add 2021, and hit save, republish. And so it's so annoying. But now you can actually say, in perpetuity, we're going to base this parameter's selection set based on whatever's in this field called year. And so now it's dynamically updating the parameter list, which is super cool. Anything you would add to that?
So that's exactly how I use this in the beta. Yeah.
Super powerful. It's one of these things they've been asking for since the beginning. Yeah, it's finally here. Any other thoughts, questions? Yes? Can they, I'm sorry?
Parameters added over to show,
Mm-hmm.
will there ever be a selection for relevant values just as it is filters?
Relevant values. Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is in like quick filters when you can say just show me relevant values.
Yeah, when you add, when you show the filters and you can select relevant values.
Mm-hmm.
Parameters.
Yeah, so the parameter, if you show the parameter, so what we were doing in the example I just gave, we didn't expose the fact that there were parameters to the user at all. There's no place for you to type anything, no place for you to do any sort of input. A lot of times what people use parameters for is to toggle between metrics or to swap dimensions. So I want to, instead of looking at it by product line, I want to look at it by geography. So I can create a metric swapper and change that list. But that, to your question, that list is set by the developer. So like I would say, all right, what's going to be in that list? So we've created a new parameter. And let's say I wanted to make it a list. I actually have to populate the values for this list. And so there's no really like relevant values necessarily. But yeah, so I'm setting what the values are, and the user gets to pick from what I've selected. Or I give them an empty box and they can type in a number or pick a date, that kind of thing. So handy little tool. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions, or a different perspective on that question? No?
Because he was essentially setting up those conditions of they can't be in the loser's circle, they can't be in the winner's circle, pull everyone else. And everyone else in that case is your relevant values. Maybe it might just take, to today's point, it might take, unfortunately, like that kind of like setup beforehand to filter that out. So That's a kind of a case by case one. It's a great question.
Yeah, so this, where is it, this one? So we've set the context, so effectively we've said, like, show me relevant values of potential winners, and there's only one based on my filters that I created. So, and that's kind of how we're drawing one name. So, anyways, cool. Well, thanks guys.